Not an easy transition, huh? It's like, one of the things after 25 years I've always asked the praise and worship team is to, finish on a crescendo, because it's like you rip somebody away from the throne of God. It's a tough transition. But it's an important message, and it's probably the most important message, really. I mean, if you were on your deathbed and you had one last thing to say to your loved ones, what would you tell them? Sure. So maybe you shouldn't wait to your deathbed and let them know that on a regular basis, huh? Yeah, it's too late. People, I go to funerals and I hear these great eulogies, and I wonder if they told the person that when they were living. At that point, it's a little late. Nice memorial, but they're not there to hear it, huh? Yeah. The crew left on Wednesday, and, my house is very busy, and my life is very busy. I'm sure your life is busy, too, because of this society that we live in pulling at us and wanting everything yesterday. It's, for some of you old-timers, you know how incredibly busy that is and how incredibly uncivilized it is, really. We call ourselves civilized and progressive, and we're very uncivilized with our progression. And my house is busy. We homeschool, it's busy. And this ministry is a bear. It's just a bear trying to keep up with everybody who's listening online, who I try so hard to connect with them, but they don't have a congregation. So with their congregation, they write to me and say, "You're my rabbi." And it's really hard, to try to take care of this place and the India place and the Israel place and the Australia place and the Africa place and all the people that are online that just so badly want to connect. So yesterday morning, because nobody was there, it was unbelievable. I have to tell you, I couldn't imagine having any more fun than being in no rush at all and nothing to do but sit and hang out with my daddy. It was the most wonderful morning. And even when I got to the point where I remember when Bernadette goes away, I found out that plants need water, otherwise they die. But I always forget it, And then when she comes home, her plants are dead. And then I remember again, I should do that next time she goes. So I went outside, because then I had to get here to get the scriptures ready for today. And it was enough time. It was about 3-4 hours at the Lord, and I had to do some things. Duty called. So I went out and I said, "Boy, I better water those plants because I haven't watered them for a few days." And the Lord said, "Son, go, I'll water them later." And it was very conversant. That's the way I talk to the Lord, and that's the way he talks to me. And I said, "Okay," not realizing. And then about 4 o'clock, I said, "Man, I really need to." It was hot all day. And there was a deluge of rain that came down. I heard the Lord say, "I told you I'll water them." At about 5:30, seriously, at 5:30 at my house, and the crazy thing was, I went over a friend's house yesterday in Monroe County, and when I got to his house, a deluge. It wasn't a little rain. I don't know what you guys had. I don't know where you are, whether it's Warner Robins, whatever. But I'm telling you, over my house, it was a downpour. My backyard got muddy. You can ask my son. I'm not making this up. And then when I went over my friend's house, I said, "Boy, that was some rain." He goes, "We didn't get a drop." I go, "You didn't get a drop?" So I wonder, some of you live in my development. Was it just over my house? Or was it in that neck of the woods? I don't know, but isn't that incredible? "Go, son, you got something to do. I'll water them later." Okay. And then 4:30, the rain, I said, "Wait." I said, "Okay." And then came down, and everything got watered. I mean, does he really, it's, I don't know. Can you wrap your mind around that? Not that he watered the plants, but that the author and sustainer of the universe, the one who in the very beginning was beyond all space and time, totally transcendent and altogether sovereign. And all things were made by him and through him and back to him. And that God of the universe, the one true God, cares about my wife's plants? Wants to be intimately involved with me and you? What do you do with that? How do you not worship that God? How do you not tell everybody about that God? I don't care if they accept it or not. They're going to hear it. Well, I was excited for you to come today because I think a lot of us can relate to Moses in some ways. I know I can totally relate to him on a lot of different levels. And we're going to look at how amazing his walk was with God, and although he will go down, without a doubt, in biblical history as one of the greats. I mean, top 5 for sure. Maybe top 3, really. If not, maybe the greatest. He needed very badly to get this revelation of who God was and who God is. And I think we all need that. And some of us might need a refreshing of it, even today. And I'm hopeful that something will happen. Now, I want to talk about his praises. I want to fast forward. Last week we talked about, and you should really grab a hold of that message last week, okay? We spoke about how Moses got the call from God, okay? Okay, you're going to be the deliverer of the children of Israel. Okay, you're the one. You're getting the call. And we'll speak about his reaction, how he answered that call. But before we get into that, because it's a little embarrassing sometimes, and I don't want to speak disrespectfully of such an incredible man of God. So let me first fast forward to Numbers and Deuteronomy and talk about his greatness a little bit, okay? Will you let me do that? So let's look at Numbers 12:3 to start. And it says, now this man Moses was very humble. Now, who wrote Numbers? How humble could he be? I mean, he wrote, no, but it's not like, hey, he said, I'm very humble and I'm very proud of my humility. It's not like that. God told him to write this, okay? It was spoken to him to write. But God is saying that to us, this man Moses was more humble than anyone on the planet. Can you imagine if you were called that? Out of the 7 billion people, there is somebody out of the 7 billion who's the most humble. There is. I don't know who it is. But how would you like to be that person? Well, I'll explain a little bit. Look at what Yeshua says about humility in Matthew 18. It's huge. It says at that moment, after the transfiguration of Matthew 17, they realized who he was, the glory of God in the flesh. It said at that moment, the Talmudim, his disciples, his students, came to him and asked, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Now there will be people that will tell you, I've heard this doctrine that everybody's the same. It's not true. I don't know where they get I don't know where some of you get your doctrine from. You heard it from somebody, and I don't know where they got it from. Don't you want to check with the book? There's different levels of humility, and there's different levels of least and greatest in the kingdom. There's no question about it. Otherwise, he would have answered, why do you ask such a question? It would have been rhetorical. Who is the greatest? He calls a little child to him. Now, you got to realize, in that culture, children did not speak. They were of no consequence. Okay? So he calls a little child to him, which, you know what a slap in the face this was? To the great Pharisees. They stood him among them, and he said, yes, I tell you that unless you guys become like this little kid, you won't even get in. I don't care what profession you make. Your profession could be a proud one. You've got to have a heart like a kid. What's he saying? What's great about a kid? First of all, they'll almost believe anything. Some adults, they believe almost nothing. I got to see it to believe it. They don't walk by faith. Totally walk by sight and science and a lot of other stuff. Kid, I tell my kids when they were little about the Lord, they believe anything. They believed every time they prayed it was going to happen. Absolutely. And then they grow up. Some of them still have it. They still believe. My little one, if I just say I'm having a bad day, she puts her hand on my head immediately. Doesn't ask me to pray. Immediately. She believes in the power of God, without a doubt. What else is great about a kid? They forgive. Remember that? Remember when you used to be able to forgive when you were little? Now we hold a grudge. Prove that they're wrong and we're right. And they know how to make friends, right? When we get to be adults, I don't want any friends. I've had friends, right? I'm going to be alone. But I love God. How much do you love God if you can't love his people? So the greatest in the kingdom, there it is he who makes himself as humble. So humility is the one character trait that will dictate whether one's least or great. Therefore, the most humble, and also a child is dependent. They're needy. Some of us, I'm okay. I got this thing. Bully for you. I have nothing. I am afraid to leave the house unless I know God is going before me. I have no confidence in myself or in this world. None. And the more I know God and the more I know me, the less confidence I have in me, the more confidence I have in him. That's a maturation. And so humility is a key character trait. The more humble, the greater you all be in the kingdom. So here's Moses, the most humble man on the planet. Somebody say, wow. Good. Okay, let's continue in that section of Numbers 12. Remember what happens in Numbers 12? Moses' sister and Moses' brother, Aaron the high priest and Miriam the priestess, they were prophets. They spoke on behalf of God, but that wasn't good enough for them, huh? It wasn't good enough to be number 2 and number 3. Silver and bronze wasn't good enough. They wanted the gold. And so what did they do? Listen, every time, just for the record, somebody came against Moses' authority, either turned leprous, a plague broke out, the earth opened up and swallowed them alive. When are you going to learn how to stop rebelling and submit to authority? If you can't submit to what you do see, 1 John says, then you can't submit to what you don't see. So if you have problems submitting to authority, there's no way you're submitting to God. Make no mistake. It says in Numbers 12:8, 5 verses later, he comes down, remember? He comes down and they come outside the tent. And Moses is outside the tent, and Aaron is outside the tent, and Miriam is outside the tent. And he goes, come here. And Moses starts coming. He goes, no, not you. You and you. You're fine. You two. Here, now. And he says, who do you think you are? This is not a democracy. It's a theocracy. I appointed him. He's my mouthpiece. With him, I speak direct. We have direct communication. He sees a manifest presence of me in that tent of meeting. We speak face to face, pornim to pornim. Not in riddles. Not in these, today we have all these mysteries of the veil, the riddle of the enigma. People get so attracted to that crap. Let me ask you something. If you really knew where the Ark of the Covenant was, would that change your faith any? Because if I thought you'd be more faithful, I'd go looking for it. Why are you getting caught up in that nonsense, those mysteries? You know these people on TV who say, oh, shut the camera off. I have a friend in the Israeli army. I can't tell you his name. Because you don't know his name. That's why you can't tell his name. I don't speak in riddles. He sees the image. He sees my very image, a manifest presence of me. So why weren't you afraid to criticize Moses? Moses saw what ordinary believers have to wait to their death to see. Look at Psalm 17:15. But my prayer in righteousness and rightness is to see your face. On waking, meaning from death, when I get my resurrected body, I'll be satisfied with a vision of you. We have to wait till either he comes or we go. Moses saw it in his lifetime. Can you imagine every day sitting with the manifest presence of the Lord and talking to him? I'm trying to tell you about how great this guy was. Numbers 12, 9 through 13. Let's continue with the story. The anger of Adonai flared up against them, Miriam and Aaron, and he left. But when the cloud was removed from above the tent, Miriam had tzatzeret, leprosy, but it's symbolic. In Judaism, in Hebraic thinking, in Old Testament understanding, tzatzeret wasn't just physical leprosy. It was a sign of sin and death. She had sin and she was dying. It was on her arm and it was going to move to her whole body and she was done. As white as snow, Aaron looked at Miriam and she was as white as snow. Aaron said to Moshe, "Oh my Lord." All of a sudden, that's a change of tune, huh? 1 minute, who do you think you are? "Oh my Lord." It's funny how when we're desperate, we submit. Right? "Oh God, if you just, I'll never." Aaron said to Moshe, "Oh my Lord, please don't punish us for this sin we committed so foolishly." Now he's calling himself a fool. Good. He's repenting. Repentance. He's making teshuvah. Good. Please don't let her be like a stillborn baby, half dead, with its body half eaten away when it comes out of its mother's womb. So what does Moshe do? You should have not rebelled. Moshe cries to Adonai, "Oh God, I beg you." How about that for a prayer, kids? Please heal her. Wow. When God wants to heal, he can heal. He doesn't need your dissertation on healing. He does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, to whom he wants. Whenever he wants, he answers to nobody. He's God. And just for the record, he's the healer, not you. Don't ever let me hear you say, "Well, I prayed for that person, they got healed." God healed them. You're the healee, he's the healer. Look at what Moses does. He's so compassionate and forgiving, he cries out without hesitation. No, well, maybe you shouldn't have. He didn't even let the leprosy stay more than a few minutes. Well, let her brew a little bit. Let's keep walking. Let her steep in her leprosy, and then she'll come crying to me. Look at how beautiful he is, how forgiving. He cries out without hesitation. In fact, show me where Miriam apologizes. We say until they realize they're wrong, until they come to me, then and only then. She doesn't apologize. That's new theology, huh? God, what are you saying, God? I got to forgive them even if they don't apologize? That's what God's saying. Yeah. This is so uncommon today, as it seems like people's debts are never forgotten. So uncommon. Moses is amazing. Amazing, amazing man of God. One other thing I want to talk about Moses, Deuteronomy 34:5. Now we're transitioning to the end of his life. Okay, they're in the promised land, and he has to pass the baton. So Moses, the servant of Adonai, verses 5 and 10 through 12, Moses, the servant of Adonai, died there in the land of Moab, as Adonai had said. Of course, nobody knows where he died because it would be a shrine to this day. And you're supposed to worship the Lord your God and him only. Since that time, listen to this, since that time, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moshe. No, he was the prophet, okay? Not the prophet, if you will. The prophet was Yeshua, because it says in Deuteronomy 18:15 and 18:18 respectively that there'd be a prophet that would come like unto Moses. Listen to everything he says, remember? I remember the Jewish people, when Yeshua came on the scene, they said, "Is this the prophet?" They knew the Torah, there was no New Testament. Is this the one? And yes, he was. There has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moshe, whom Adonai knew face to face. What signs and wonders Adonai sent him to perform in the land of Egypt upon Pharaoh and his servants in all his land. What might was in his hand. What great terror he evoked before the eyes of all Israel. Can you imagine if God would say this about you? What does he say about you? Can you imagine if he said this about you? What signs and wonders you performed. What might was in your hand. What great terror you evoked before people. Because this word, servant, which is so hard to find today. It's so hard to find servants. Everybody wants to be served. It's so hard. Look at the word servant in Hebrew. Ebed, which means slave. Okay? The root word, there's some roots in the Hebrew language. Obad, let's take a look at the root word. To serve as subject. I got news for you, and you probably know this already, but I just want to remind you, if Yeshua is the king, that makes you subject to his rule and reign. Do you see yourself as his slave? I bet not. I bet a lot of people today, especially in our new wave aftershave faith in America, he serves us. This is not the Bible. They're preaching another gospel. I don't care how much fun it is. They're preaching another gospel. Why are you falling for it when you know the Word of God?
Hallelujah. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Look at Matthew 23:11, where Yeshua is speaking the woes. The greatest among you must be your servant. This is his words. The greatest will be the most humble. The greatest will serve. The word minister is to serve. I don't need anybody cutting my grass. I got kids. I didn't just have them for the dependency exemption. It's not enough. Service, according to Yeshua, depicts greatness in God's economy. One of the first trips I went on like 25 years ago was in Nicaragua. And a man picks me up at the airport, scarred. And he says something in Spanish, and I have an interpreter with me. His name was Brother Rojas. He was beaten up. He was scarred because of his faith by the Sandinista in Nicaragua. Punished, tortured, imprisoned. And he says something to me. And I said, Marco, what does he say? He said, Rabbi Greg, I am your slave. And that's when it hit me. Man, they don't get it in America. And I kept going to Argentina, to India, to Africa, and it was the same concept. So hard to find. True greatness stoops to serve. Look at Matthew 4:10. Yeshua speaks again. Away with you, Satan. The third time he tried to tempt him, Yeshua told him, for the Tanakh, that's an acronym for the Old Testament. The Torah, the Ketuvim, and the Nevim. Okay? The writings, the prophets, and the first 5 books. Worship Adonai your God and serve only him. Worship and service go hand in hand, like faith and works. Worship produces service. Service evidences the fact that you worship. There's no way around it. You can't change his words. I think about Moses' daunting task. I mean, not just bringing 2 to 3 million people across the desert with no food and no water, but 2 to 3 million Jews across the desert. Now, I could say things about Jews that you can't because you're not biologically Jewish, some of you. Just like you can't butt in with a husband and wife sometimes, or 2 brothers. You don't have the right. But I remember there was a table of Jewish women in New York eating, and the waiter came over to the table and said, ladies, is anything all right? You know what the difference between a Jewish mother-in-law and a pit bull is? A pit bull lets go every now and then. Look, we used to have a corner on the market of complaining, but you Gentiles have really caught up. I'm proud of you. See, it says 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So what do you get when you have 2 to 3 million? What a daunting task. But look at how he ends up in the honor roll of faith, Hebrews 11. Look at what it says in just 3 verses, 24 through 26. By trusting Moshe, after he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He was living in luxury. Guys, he was the king of the only empire that existed at that time that was that powerful. He had the best food. He had the best castle. He had the best teaching. He had the best clothes. He had the best servants. He had the best of the best of the best. He chose being mistreated along with God's people rather than enjoying the passing pleasures of sin. Sinful pleasures are passing and fleeting, but they leave a lot of havoc in its wake. He had come to regard abuse, suffered on behalf of the Messiah, as greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. For he kept his eyes fixed on the reward. Wouldn't you love to just insert yourself in there? That you and me chose being mistreated rather than enjoying the passing pleasures of sin. We took on abuse on behalf of Messiah as greater than the riches of treasures. Because we kept our eyes fixed on the reward. Man, That's what we should really aim for. Let me break this down for you. Hebrews 11:24. It says, by trusting Moshe, grown up, refused to be called the Pharaoh's daughter. He was a member of the social elite. You understand? The social elite, the upper crust. He was royalty. He was probably considered to be the Pharaoh, his successor. But Moses was born of better blood, a member of God's chosen, a royal priest. Look at Hebrews 11:25. He chose being mistreated rather than enjoying the passing pleasures of sin. Humble association with God's people meant more to him than passing pleasure. And last but not least, Hebrews 11:26, he had come to regard abuse suffered on behalf of Messiah as greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. Loyalty to God and love for his people were of greater value than the combined wealth of Pharaoh. His reward was eternal, and his faith enabled him to hold on to that truth. So instead of occupying a few lines of hieroglyphics on some obscure Egyptian tomb, Moses is memorialized in God's eternal book. Instead of being found in some museum as an Egyptian mummy, Moses is famous as the servant of the Lord. Moses gives us a message here, and the message is this: do not sacrifice what you want most for what you want at the moment. Think about your decisions. Think about their ramifications. And most importantly, think about God. Now, although Moses, via the grace of God and his willful obedience, became this great pillar of faith, it didn't start out like this. So I didn't want to start with this. I wanted to first tell you how he ended up. But let's go in the in-between, from the time he got the call till where he ended up, okay? I'm going to give you Moses' laundry list of lack, or his inventory, I call it, of inadequacy. Okay, you'll get the picture. Look at Exodus 3:11. He gets called, and I call this lack of capability. Moshe said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" Now, he's in Midian for 40 years. Life is peaceful. Nobody's going to come get him there. Nobody even knows where he is. And now all of a sudden he has to go to the most powerful ruler in the world who has a bounty on his head and a people who can't stand him because he was the little rich boy living in the castle while they were being abused for 400 years. So Moshe says to God, "Who am I that I should go and lead the people of Israel?" In other words, come on, Lord. I was the prince of Egypt, now I'm the pauper of Midian. Really? You got the wrong guy. Nothing could be further than the truth, you asking me to go and speak to the Pharaoh. That's ridiculous. So that doesn't really cut it. So Exodus 3:13, I call this lack of message. Moshe said to God, "Look, when I appear before the people of Israel and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' they're going to ask me, 'What's your name?' What am I supposed to tell them? I got no message. I don't know what to say. What am I supposed to say?" And then we go to Exodus 4:1, and we call this lack of authority. Moshe replies, "I'm certain they won't believe me. I am confident. I am totally 100% sure that they're not going to listen to me. And they won't listen to what I say." Oh, there it goes. "And they won't listen to what I say because they'll say, 'Adonai did not appear to me.'" I mean, who's going to believe him? What proof does he have? Exodus 4:10, lack of eloquence. This is so true today. Golly, some of these guys in the pulpit, they'd be CEOs or CFOs of major companies. They're so brilliant. My pastor's so brilliant. Who cares? What does that mean? If he uses 5-syllable words, you're not going to be able to understand them anyway. Yeshua taught to kids. It's changed so much. We applaud the intelligentsia. I don't think there's anything wrong with being intelligent, but why don't you get off your high horse already? Moshe said to Adonai, "Oh, Adonai, I'm a terrible speaker." Some say he has an impediment. Listen, I don't know. He wasn't good at speaking to people. You ever hear that? Do you know Harvard School of Psychology, the number one fear? Public speaking. The number 2 fear is what? Death and dying. So if you're at a funeral, you'd rather be the dead guy than the one giving the eulogy. Did you ever try to speak publicly? I've seen people cry. I've seen people do all kinds of things. It's not necessarily easy. I'm not comfortable. You might, oh, you're very comfortable. No, I'm not. I'm much more comfortable on the street talking to one person. I'm not comfortable with this. But you know what? If God wants it done, then let him do it. And that's what Moses felt the same way. I'm not good with people. I don't talk good. Oh, I don't know, I'm a terrible speaker. I've always been. I'm no better now. Even after you've spoken to your servant, my words come slowly. I don't know if you've noticed, but my syntax and my grammar is awful. That's why I don't really write. I just don't write because it's an abomination when I write. So what's he saying here? Lord, I don't speak good. And God says, Moses, it's I don't speak well, right? And then continuing, Exodus 4:11 through 13. Lack of special adaptation. Can't adapt in this situation. Adonai answers him, who gives a person a mouth? Who makes a person dumb or deaf, keen-sighted or blind? Isn't it I? God makes people blind? There goes that theology of yours, huh? Oh boy. Adonai, now therefore go. I will be with your mouth and I will teach you what to say. But he replied, look, in other words, I'm a square peg in a round hole. I don't fit the bill. Lord, there's so many other people that you could send. There's 3 million of them. Clearly there's somebody smart. There's somebody well-spoken. There's somebody that's accepted by their people. There's somebody that's not too hated by Pharaoh. There's got to be somebody better than me. Really? And it continues. Exodus 5:22-23. Do you find yourself in this, guys? Yeah. Lack of previous success. Moshe returns to Adonai and says, Adonai, why have you treated this people so terribly? Now they have a larger quota and they have to make their own straw. Remember? So now it's almost impossible. What has been the value of sending me? So he goes to them and it gets worse. Now he gets a worse reputation. For ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt terribly with this people. God didn't say you were going to be successful. He just said you had to be faithful. I love when people say, I went there and 11 people got saved and 22 people gave this and this is our tithes and offerings. You're so worldly, it's pathetic. Nickels and noses. The world has crept into your world. And you haven't rescued your people at all. Lord, the people know I'm a failure. Do you know, I got to tell you something. He had the biggest problem, not with Pharaoh and the Egyptians, but with the Jewish people. And I got news for you, and I'm going to tell you something that's absolutely positively true, and I don't care if you believe it or not, but opposition within the ranks of God's people is often harder to bear than persecution from without. I've never been persecuted by the world like I am by the body of Messiah. Never. The world doesn't agree with me, but they almost respect me because they're like, man, at least you'll die for a cause, won't you? You really believe this stuff, don't you? And I'm like, yes, I do. But it's the body of believers that will put you under a microscope and ask you to be somebody that they can never be. What's wrong with you? Last but not least, Exodus 6:12, lack of previous acceptance. Moshe says to Adonai, look, the people of Israel haven't listened to me. They won't listen to me. So how will Pharaoh listen to me, the poor speaker that I am? Obviously, he's saying, look, they don't even like me. They don't like me. So they're not going to listen to me. Again, get somebody else. So, what's the take-home message? Mo won't go because Mo don't know. He does not really know the Lord. He has not really received the revelation except the burning bush. Abraham's God and Isaac's God and Jacob's God, but was it his God? Because if he knew, he would go. Yes? So anyway, he finishes and God says, well, Moses, this concludes the interview. I appreciate you coming. And he goes, okay, well, and he goes, no, you're hired. I just gave you a laundry list of lack. I told you every reason why you should not hire me. So, in point of fact, the excuses that Moses used to show his inadequacy were the very reasons God chose him for the task. Do you understand that? This is very important for you to get in your spirit. He does not use the wise and the smart. They use themselves. They get the glory. How many times I want to freak out when somebody goes, I go to so-and-so's church. It's not so-and-so's church. He's the under-shepherd. He's the gatekeeper. It's God's church. I would freak out if somebody said, I go to Rabbi Greg's synagogue. No, you go to Beth Yeshua. I have never, ever, in the 12 and a half years I'm here, pointed you to me, ever. In fact, I tell you my inadequacies, and I broadcast them, so you would never look to me, because I'm not looking to you. The Lord is my salvation. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my healer. The Lord is my deliverer. The Lord is my high tower. The Lord is my strong refuge. The Lord saved me. The Lord is sanctifying me. And the Lord has come back to glorify me. So let's do this quick. Let's look at the first screen. I am not able, Moses says. God says, I am. Next. I'm not a messenger, God says. Good, you're getting the hang of this. By the seventh one, you're going to have it down pat. You see. I've got faith in you. I'm not authoritative. I'm not a good speaker. I'm not right. I'm not successful. I'm not legit. God is too legit. He's too legit to quit. You want to talk about hammer time. Look, so you see all these inadequacies. You see how he has absolutely no confidence. And yet, you see how he ended up? So if that's true about his character, and that's true about our character, can we end up in Hebrews 11 if the story kept telling? Of course we can. He didn't have any special dispensation. Not at all. No, he was just the ordinary, serving the extraordinary. Let me show you what I think happened, okay? And this is just my little silly opinion. He gets called in Exodus 4, verses 1 through 2. Moses replies, but I'm certain they won't. I'm positive, okay? It's not going to work. Absolutely positive. I bet my life on it. They won't believe me. They won't listen to what I say because they'll say, Adonai did not appear to you. And Adonai answers him, what's in that hand of yours? A staff. Now, before we get to the word staff, I feel the Holy Spirit stirring. Do you remember the 3 signs that God gave Moses in the next few verses? Because I don't have them up there. What was the first sign? The staff became a snake. He grabbed it, and it became a staff again. The second sign? Leprosy. His hand went in his cloak, came out leprous, went back in, came out clean. The third sign? The blood. Do you see the message that Moses was getting? Symbolically, serpent represents Satan, and leprosy represents sin and death, and the blood represents Messiah's sacrifice. That through the Messiah's sacrifice, you will overcome Satan, sin, and death. Can you imagine? Right there in Exodus. So Moses says, I got my staff, right? So let's look at what the word means. Rod, mate, and of course there's another word, a root word for staff in the Hebrew, natah, to stretch out, to extend one's hand or arm. Okay, so if you fast forward a little bit in chapter 4, he decides to go, okay? Let's look at verses 13 through 20. We're almost home. But he replies, please, Lord, send someone else, anyone you want. At this, Adonai's anger blazed up against Moshe. He said, don't you have a brother, Aaron, the Levi? I know that he's a good speaker. In fact, here's the Cyrano de Bergerac. I know that he's a good speaker. In fact, here he is now, coming out to meet you, and he'll be happy to see you. Imagine that. He hasn't seen him in 40 years. You will speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I mean, look at this dynamic duo. Moses is what, 80? Aaron's 83? Really? Can you picture that in a superhero movie? Come here! You will speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and his, teaching you both what to do. Thus he will be your spokesman to the people. In effect for you, he will be a mouth, and for him you will be like God. Let's continue. Now take this staff in your hand because you need it to perform the signs. Now, did he really need the staff to perform the signs? Does God need a staff? Does God need anything? No, sometimes if God tells you to do something, you know what? Why do you ask why? Why don't you just do it? You tell your kids all the time, right? To do stuff. And then when they ask you, you go, why are you questioning me? I'm your father. I'm your mother. And yet you question God all the time. What kind of example is that for them? God tells you to go somewhere, go. If he tells you to do something, do. If he tells you to give something, give. How do I know it's him? Because Satan doesn't want you to evangelize. Satan doesn't want you to go to another country. What's the matter with you? Who could it be? Give that guy a sandwich. Satan, yeah. Buy him a sandwich in Yeshua's name. I got to pray about it. Moses left, returned to Yithro, his father-in-law, and said to him, I beg you to let me go, out of respect. He was working for him. Jethro took him in out of respect. And returned to my kinsmen in Egypt to see if they're still alive. Yithro said to Moses, go in peace. Adonai said to Moshe, in Midian, go on back to Egypt because all the men who wanted to kill you are dead. Good news. So Moshe went. He took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started out for Egypt. Now look at what changes. Moshe took God's staff, not his staff. You follow? It was God's outstretched arm now. It was God's hand that was on his head anointing him. God anoints what God appoints. You follow? If God has called you to a task, you never have to wonder if it's going to be fulfilled. God has no unfinished projects and no unfinished business. Who better to trust than the creator and the sustainer of the universe? He picked up the rod of God, which is a whole different story. Okay, so the $64,000 question is, what's in your hands? You know the commercial for American Express 35 years ago, don't leave home without it? I wouldn't leave home without God's rod. I trust me less than I trust you. Not because I'm worried about what I may do. I trust the Lord. He has not failed me yet. He has not failed you yet. And because he doesn't change, he never will. Let me just end this with a great passage from 1 Corinthians. It's a little lengthy, so hang in there. For the Messiah did not send me. You could be reading this about yourself. Okay? Put yourself in it. Feel it. The Messiah did not send me to immerse, but to proclaim the good news. And to do it without relying on wisdom that consists of mere rhetoric. You know how these people have these patented things they say? It's pathetic. So as to not rob the Messiah's execution stake of its power. For the message about the execution stake is nonsense to those in the process of being destroyed. But to us, in the process of being saved, I love that. That's present progressive. Yeshua said, if you keep your faith and endure to the end, you shall be saved. It's not where you start, it's where you end up. But to us, in the process of being saved, it's the power of God. Indeed, the Tanakh says, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and frustrate the intelligence of the intelligent. It's been resurrected, but God's ready to do it again. Let's continue on. Where does that leave the philosopher? Philosophers in Greece, which Corinth is in Greece, okay? You have to understand the time, okay? First century Greece, they held philosophers as national heroes. The men of intelligentsia, powerful men, pearls of wisdom come from him. Where does that leave the philosopher? Look at what Paul's saying. And let me tell you something. Paul was so smart that people couldn't even understand him. He had to get knocked off his high horse and just come to the realization that it's not about his wisdom and his intelligence and his knowledge of the Tanakh. It's him that's speaking. He's speaking from personal experience. So where does that leave the philosopher? He was a lot brighter than them. He was handpicked in the whole diaspora, the one Jew who was handpicked to study under Rabbi Gamaliel. Do you know what that's like? You talk about getting into Harvard today or something like that? Greater. He was going to be Israel's teacher, the new Nicodemus. Peter said, I can't even understand them. The philosopher, where does that leave the Torah teacher or any of today's thinkers? Man, this is so relative today, you have no idea, and I hope you grab it before we split. Hasn't God made this world's wisdom look pretty foolish? For God's wisdom ordained that the world, using its own wisdom, would not come to know him. And some people do know him, neck up. Therefore, God decided to use the nonsense of what we proclaim as his means of saving those who come to trust in it. Look, I went to school on a scholastic scholarship. That's not easy to do. I could use words to make your head spin. For what purpose? So you'll go, wow, you're smart. So what? So what? Does smart make me a good husband, make me a good father, make me a good child of God? Smart help me feed people in India? Clothe the widows? That's smart, but not the kind of smart we think. Precisely because Jews ask for signs. Show me a sign, show me a sign, show me a sign. I'll believe it when you show me a sign. I'll believe it when you show me a sign. I'll believe it when you show me a sign. Show me a sign, show me a sign, show me a sign. Dude, Israel is 7,900 square miles. Everybody hates her and she exists. There's your sign. May 1948, there's your sign. Look, they've got a great military, and I love them, but they got a greater God. It's the God of Israel. Jews want a sign, and Greeks, the Gentiles, they love wisdom. I'm going to study, I'm going to study, I'm going to study, I'm going to study, I'm going to study. I'm going to study so much, I'm never going to go out, and I'm never going to share the gospel, but I'm going to be so knowledgeable. You know 1,000,000 times more than my friend Samuel, and he's led 10,000 Hindus to the faith. We started out there with him and a few kids in Muramanda, and now we have over 200 pastors that say they're under the umbrella of Beth Yeshua International. He didn't use it signs, and he didn't use it with wisdom. It was the power of the Holy Spirit using a knucklehead like him through a knucklehead like me. Greeks try to find wisdom. We go on proclaiming a Messiah executed on a stake as a criminal. To Jews, this is an obstacle. To Greeks, it is nonsense. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, this same Messiah is God's power and God's wisdom. You got it? He's the sign. He's the wisdom of God. For God's nonsense is wiser than humanity's wisdom. And God's weakness is stronger than humanity's strength. Just look at yourselves, brothers. Look at those whom God has called. Not many of you are wise by the world's standards. Not many wield power or boast noble birth. Do we have any nobility here? I don't think so. It's a Messianic synagogue, let's be honest. But God shows what the world considers nonsense in order to shame the wise. God shows what the world considers weak in order to shame the strong. And God shows what the world looks down on as common or regards as nothing in order to bring to nothing what the world considers important, so that no one should boast before God. Our God is forgiving to the nth degree, not only forgiving but forgetting. There is nobody that can compete with his grace and mercy. But don't you touch his glory, because them are fighting words. The reason why he uses knuckleheads like us is so he can get the glory. He has to get the glory. It is his doing that you are united with the Messiah Yeshua. Agreed? He has become wisdom for us from God, and righteousness and holiness and redemption as well. Therefore, as the Tanakh says, let anyone who wants to boast, you got something to brag about? You're so accomplished, tell me. Show me your accolades. It's okay to work excellently in the Lord's name. The other day, somebody saw Bernadette and I. We were up in Atlanta, and we went to get something to eat, and they said, I see happy. You don't see happy anymore. We were in an area that was so wealthy, the 9th most wealthiest zip code in the nation. The mean income for a family of 4 is $360,000. Mercedes and BMWs don't cut it. And yet she said, what's going on? You look so happy. I never see people happy. She assumed we were somebody. She goes, who are you? I said, no one of consequence. She goes, surely you must be somebody, ex-athlete. She goes, why are you so happy? I said, you don't see the third person. Let anyone who wants to boast about Adonai. There are efforts today to make the gospel more acceptable. People are trying to be cool and change the message. If you're not going to get cut to the heart, there's going to be no repentance. There's going to be no salvation. It's the power of God. It's not the power of the person speaking. It's God doing the anointing. He's the anointer. The best we could be is the anointee. I'm just happy to be in his hands. I'm just a tool, but I like when he grabs me out of the box and uses me. I'm okay to be in his hands. I don't need any glory. I know who I am. I'm a bum. He's my God. There was a premium in the first century on human wisdom. They exalted in the first century preachers who sought to make the message palatable to the worldly wise. And it's an outrage to me. Today more than ever, they're making it palatable. They're telling the other country preachers, you don't get it. If you want a big audience, you got to change. You got to give them what they want to hear. You got to get kids programs like a cruise ship so the kids say, Mommy, Daddy, I want to go back there. I don't know the Lord, but man, those video games were awesome. It's misguided, and it's preaching another gospel. Let me give it to you in the Message Bible just so you can go home with this. God didn't send me out to collect a following for myself, but to preach the message of what he has done, collecting a following for him. And he didn't send me to do it with a lot of fancy rhetoric of my own, lest the powerful action at the center, the Messiah on the cross, be trivialized into mere words. The message that points to the Messiah on the cross seems like sheer silliness to those hell-bent on destruction. But for those on the way of salvation, it makes perfect sense. This is the way God works, and most powerfully, as it turns out. It's written, I'll turn conventional wisdom on its head. I'll expose so-called experts as crackpots. So where can you find someone truly wise, truly educated, truly intelligent in this day and age? Hasn't God exposed it all as pretentious nonsense? Since the world in all its fancy wisdom never had a clue when it came to knowing God, God in his wisdom took delight in using what the world considered dumb preaching of all things to bring those who trust him into the way of salvation. While Jews clamor for miraculous demonstrations and Greeks go in for philosophical wisdom, we go right on proclaiming the Messiah, the crucified. Jews treat this like an anti-miracle. Greeks pass it off as absurd. But to us who are personally called by God himself, both Jews and Greeks, the Messiah is God's ultimate miracle and wisdom all wrapped up in one. Human wisdom is so tiny, so impotent next to the seeming absurdity of God. Human strength can't begin to compete with God's weakness. Take a good look, friends, at who you were when you got called into this life. I don't see many of the brightest and the best among you, not many influential, not many from high society families. Isn't it obvious that God deliberately chose men and women that the culture overlooks and exploits and abuses? Chose these nobodies to expose the hollow pretensions of the somebodies? That makes it quite clear that none of you can get by with blowing your own horn before God. Everything that we have, right thinking and right living, a clean slate and a fresh start, comes from God by way of Yeshua the Messiah. That's why we have the saying, if you're going to blow a horn, blow a trumpet for God. The whole point of God's message to me, to you, is that you might be a nobody, but you're serving the greatest of somebodies. You know what God has done through you at times. I could not be a dad. I could not take care of 4 kids. I was the king of irresponsibility. I lived on my own for many years till 30. I had everything set up the way I wanted it. Everything was fine. I couldn't take on anything. I couldn't take on a stuffed animal. That would have been too much work. And I told God when we first connected, I'll do anything and I'll go anywhere. And I will. I really will. Just one thing I cannot do. Don't pull me into pastoral ministry. Because seriously, it's like herding cats. And then to have 4 kids is crazy. Like, what? So I know me. You kind of know me. I know me. And for God to be pulling this off through me, there is a God in heaven. And if he could do it through me, then he could do it through anyone. And that's the encouraging word of the day. You might be nobody to the world, but you are somebody to the creator of the world. Let's stand up together. If you need somebody to pray for you, come on up after service. There'll be people up here. If you are getting prayed for, my advice would be for you to not talk. Sometimes you're having people pray for you and you're praying. If you're going to pray for you, then pray for you. You don't need them. You follow? Let them pray for you. They might just hear from the Holy Spirit for you. And then you'd be like, wow, how'd they know that? They didn't know that. God knew that. And therefore, God gets the glory once again, right? I hope you have a great weekend. I have one more pint of ice cream left, so it looks like I have dinner tonight. There's absolutely nothing in the refrigerator. And I had my son the other day do a wash. I said, listen, I'm kind of running out of some undergarments. I need a wash. And he said, Dad, this has been here like as long as I've been here. It's 21 years old. You don't know how the wash machine works? And I go, what's your point, you know? But no, and then he opened up and there were 3 holes. I was like, 3 holes? We got 1 detergent. He goes, no, there's bleach that goes in there for the whites. And I'm like, so you told me you got to separate stuff. 1 wash machine, but separation, huh? Just like the body of Messiah. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his very countenance upon you and give you what the world just can't, his peace. In the name of the Prince of all peace, Yeshua. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Yo'er Adonai panov elecha v'hunecha Yisa Adonai panov elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom. Love you. Shabbat shalom.